Hi, I'm Lisa London. I'm an accountant beside you. Many times I have been asked, can I use QuickBooks for church accounting? And considering I have just written the book, QuickBooks for Church Accounting and Other Religious Organizations, you can probably guess what my answer is going to be. But before you do, I'd like to take a couple minutes and explain what is good about QuickBooks in a church environment and what's not. That way, you will have the tools to evaluate for yourself if it'll work for your church. Let's start with the pros. QuickBooks is the industry standard for small businesses, so lots of people know how to use it. This means if you're using volunteers or bookkeepers who have other clients, they will most likely be familiar with the system. The church-specific accounting packages usually take more time to learn up front, and if you have to change bookkeepers, there's much more of a learning curve. Secondly, with QuickBooks, you get a lot of accounting bang for your buck. Intuit, the company that makes QuickBooks, has done a very good job of making the system user-friendly and cost-effective. Thirdly, it's an intuitive program written to appeal to non-accountants. Recurring processes like reconciling bank accounts are really easy. But it does have some limitations, specifically in the church and nonprofit areas. First of all, terminology is very different. The system refers to customers and net income and equity, which are things that a church typically doesn't have. Instead, they have donors, might have net assets or funds. Even the more expensive nonprofit version of QuickBooks only changes the labels in a few areas. QuickBooks is not a donor management system. If you need to be able to track lots of details about your clients and want to run a lot of analysis and reports, this is an accounting system. It is not a donor management system. Tracking of programs and funds is more difficult in QuickBooks than it would be in a church-specific accounting program. You will learn some specific ways to make QuickBooks work for this, but just know up front it's not as defined. Recording restricted and unrestricted net assets also takes more work. Reports for nonprofits are different than those for businesses. And so, do the pros outweigh the cons? I go back to my previous answer. It depends. There are workarounds for most limitations, but you will need to decide if they are sufficient for your situation. I'll take you through each one of the workarounds for you to decide. The first one was terminology. You just have to get used to it. In my book, QuickBooks for Churches and Other Religious Organizations, I include a chart like this one for you to copy and leave by your desk until you get familiar with the terminology on the system versus the kind of terminology used in your church. Second one was the donor management issue. I wanted to bring up for you what it looks like when you add a new customer so you can get an idea of what data is available. So you can see with your customer name, address, lots of different contact information here, and you can even change these titles to include LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Skype, which is all very handy, pardon me, and useful. Additionally, there's something called additional info here where you can define some custom fields and say up to 7 of your own labels has to be consistent across all the customers that you can use to put some additional data in. Okay there and okay there. Then you can also add some additional contacts, say spouses or children or whatever, on here in the contracts area. So it does give you lots of tools for tracking your members or your donors, but what it doesn't do is give you more of the analysis and the ability to do more interesting mailings and those kind of things. You can use QuickBooks for the accounting system and a separate donor database system, either internet-based or standalone, to track your donor management things. There are several out there that work very well. You would, if you decide to go that route, you would want to choose a program that offers a download that the donations can be imported directly into QuickBooks, so you don't have to be entering both in the donor management system and in QuickBooks. Now, the next limitation, if you recall, was how to handle restricted donations. And here, QuickBooks requires a little bit of work around there. We're going to refer to them as classes. QuickBooks refer to classes. You would need to think programs or funds. So you would have to determine how to set up your programs, your class list, so you could reflect the expenses of your various programs, whether they be worship or education or whatever, or for your various funds that you're having to track, maybe for a cemetery or a new building, etc. In order to track fund balances and properly record restricted versus unrestricted assets, very specific journal entries and reports are required. This is also covered in the book, as well as how to do the classes. If you have grants or contracts, you will have to refer to them as jobs in QuickBooks. Now, reports are set up very differently for nonprofits than they are for businesses. So my book also has a chart of what some of the most useful reports are. And additionally, I take you back into the QuickBooks account here. You can see there's a report center. And if you have the nonprofit version, there's even a line here that says nonprofit, and it will bring up reports like your biggest donors and some of these kind of things. So either way, they're handy reports, but they don't always label things the way you would want them to be labeled. So one way that QuickBooks can work around this is you can take the report and export it out to Excel. And when you do, you can export it either to a new worksheet, or if you've already set up a worksheet, changed the labels, made it pretty, made it the way you wanted it, then you save that as an existing worksheet, and then each month you can update the existing worksheet with the new data. Very handy workaround there. Now, if you once you get that all set up, the system is very easy to use. Let's go back here. So the question then is, can I use QuickBooks for churches? Well, yes, but I'm a little biased here, but it's a lot easier if you've read QuickBooks for Churches and Other Religious Organizations first. It's available at Amazon.com and at my website, accountantbesideYou.com. For more information, go to my website, accountantbesideYou.com. And you can find out more about me, more about what all QuickBooks covers, and happy accounting.